even if the performance of our national football team reduces us to tears, it seems that on a measure of 50 indicators, we're doing pretty well on things like tolerance, education, and the environment. Not so good, however, on life expectancy and access to broadband. Now, we'll hear from the report's author in a moment, but first, Hugh Williams has been in search of the good life.
Perhaps not surprisingly, all of Scotland scored well for environmental quality. But there were red flags for low life expectancy, high death rates before the age of 65, and our infant mortality rate. And we didn't do well for what the report calls access to basic knowledge, which measures the number of pupils who leave school early and don't stay on to do 6th year or higher years. The report says Scotland has higher teenage pregnancy rates than the rest of Europe and underperforms on getting young people into education, employment and training. But there's better news on access to advanced education for those school leavers who do get the right qualifications. And the study puts Scotland in the top 10 of European regions when it comes to tolerance towards gay people, ethnic minorities and immigrants. So what do we like about where we live? We asked people in Inverness.
In England, it's a lot more kind of everyone's to their own place, but in Scotland it's a community that you live in a village and everybody knows everybody, and it's a lot more friendly.
I love the weather because it's so fickle, it's changeable, and I've spent my life, as it were, wandering the hills of Scotland, doing all the Munros and so forth. So I like the whole atmosphere of Scotland.
I've been born and brought up in Inverness, and I would never move away because I like the pace it's at. It's not a fast pace.
I think it's the people. The people in Scotland are just some of the friendliest you'll ever meet.
Well, I think everything as good as it can get in Scotland.
And we know that Scotland's islands regularly score well in quality of life surveys. Looking at pictures of Chapponsay in the Orkney Islands, it's easy to see why.
Chapponsay is a wonderful place to live. It's resilient, it's vibrant, and that's what's so wonderful about islands. It's a lot more beautiful and serene and peaceful, and you can concentrate on what really matters in life and not be caught up in things that are perhaps just distractions that everybody is used to being caught up in.
And she says the future for the community on the island is bright.
We are involved in a hydrogen energy project, which is European-wide, to counteract the negative effects of community wind turbine curtailment. So really, we're tackling things head on, and we're just making sure that we ride into the future on the crest of a wave.
The statistics in the report then have things for Scotland to celebrate and things for us to learn from, and they should help politicians make policies to benefit us all.
Hugh Williams reporting there. Well, that study was spearheaded by the European Commission and the Brussels-based think tank, the Social Progress Imperative. And I've been asking its Executive Director, Michael Green, how you measure something as open to interpretation as the quality of life.
Well, look, the standard way that we compare countries is about their wealth. But I think we all have a sense that GDP and other measures of a country's wealth aren't good enough. So the Social Progress Index puts together all the different elements that make a good society. Things from as basic as does everyone have enough food, through to do people live in a society free from discrimination. And we pull together all these different measures into one composite score of what makes a good society, the Social Progress Index.
But isn't everybody's idea of the good life different? We saw in Hugh Williams' reports that people in Inverness like living there because of the community spirit and the sense of friendliness there. But equally, for lots of people living in a city like London, despite how frantic and stressful it is, it has great career opportunities and good salaries for a lot of people.
Yet we're certainly not telling people where they should live or what they should like most. What we are saying is, based on objective data, added together, how do different regions compare to one another?
The former Prime Minister, David Cameron, he came in for a lot of criticism a few years ago for introducing his happiness index. But at least that was subjective. It was people rating their own happiness. Isn't the problem with your report is that you are deciding what makes people happy and you're asking them to rate that on the scale?
No, we're using objective indicators of people's real lived experience. How long do people live? Do they get to go to school? Is there air pollution in their environment? It's real concrete, hard data about the real quality of life based on very good, reliable statistics.
But sometimes people prefer a short but happy life as opposed to a long, unhappy one.
Well, one of the things we find out from the Social Progress Index results for Scotland is that life expectancy is one of the challenge issues that Scotland does face, despite many other positives. And again, as I say, people can make whatever choices they like about the kind of life they want to live. What we're saying is, if you add that all up and provide a comparison, maybe you can help people choose.
Now, there's not much in it between the home nations. Scotland comes out top, but only slightly above Wales and England. I wonder, from a wider European perspective, where are we failing and where could we be making the most improvement?
Well, I think this is one of the most surprising results we've seen from the European Social Progress Index. Is actually the UK scores pretty consistently. So this idea that there's sort of London and the metropolitan areas booming and the rest of the country is lagging behind just isn't substantiated by Social Progress Index data. When we compare ourselves to other countries, yes, it's the Scandinavians and Netherlands are probably a bit ahead of us. We're then in the second category alongside Germany and Austria, a bit ahead of France and well ahead of Spain and Italy, and then some of the bottom of the rankings are Romania and Bulgaria.
And what do you think accounts for these differences?
I think something is about the way countries have invested in time in basic services. One thing we can do is we can compare social progress to GDP per capita, to wealth. And what we see is that although richer countries generally do better, richer regions generally do better, it's not the whole story. The Highlands and Islands have a quarter of the GDP of inner London, but a higher level of social progress. So it's not just wealth, it's also going to be about policies on public investment, cultural norms and attitudes, a whole range of different factors. And that's one thing we want to explore a bit further, is what's actually driving these results.
I wonder what use are these studies? I mean, they are interesting, but do policymakers, A, take any note of them, and secondly, is there much they can do? For instance, you talk about, life expectancy. Of course, we all want to live a long life, but actually doing something about that in terms of policy is much more difficult.
Yeah, this is very much a practical tool. What we're saying, what this data demonstrates, is that if you've got a development strategy just based on getting more economic growth, you've got an incomplete strategy. You need to look at a strategy to improve social progress outcomes. And we're now working with a number of regions across Europe, from Poland to Spain to Finland to Italy, looking at how this data can be operationalized to drive local development strategies and really improve people's lives.
Now, this is an EU-funded project. I suspect in a few years' time we won't be part of this study. Might it not be actually quite useful to measure our happiness both pre and post-Brexit?
I think this is why we'd love to carry on, do the Time series, see what the impact of Brexit is.
Great stuff. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well, we'll see how that pans out.